Hello, everyone. I'm Ethan Evans. We're here today to talk about who executives promote and why. And in a sense, you have two speakers, me and an AI built on everything I've written, over 500,000 words. And so today, we're going to do something very interesting where we take your questions and we feed them to Ethan GPT, and then I will comment on that answer, what I think it contains, what I don't. Why am I doing this? I'm doing it to show you that actually custom GPTs for coaching have come a long way, which is bad for me in a way if people pay me a lot of money to coach them. But it's something I'm happy to see decline because I can only coach one person at a time, whereas Ethan GPT is available to you 24/7, 365, and can coach you all the time. And so I think that's better. So real quick, if you don't know me, let me do, and I'm not putting these slides full screen because I need to be able to switch to GPT. But if you don't know me, and I'll move those out of the way so you're not looking at yourselves. This is who I am, my background. So I'm educated as an engineer. I was flattered yesterday based on that to get an invitation to speak at an IEEE AI gathering. Unfortunately, the dates don't work, but that would have been super fun. I spent 12 years in various startups, so I do have startup history. I was a VP in 3 of those. I went to Amazon, where I earned my way back to VP at the big corporate scale. I worked on some stuff you probably know, Prime Video, Prime Gaming, Amazon's App Store. And for the last 5 years, I've been coaching and teaching. But that doesn't scale. Coaching one-on-one doesn't scale. So one of our audience members, actually, a wonderful guy named Alan, based out of Ireland, built the first version of Ethan Evans AI. And once he showed it to us, we started helping him. And so we've collected up over 500,000 of my words, my written words, from video transcripts, newsletters, LinkedIn posts, and other sources, and fed them all to a custom GPT so that it coaches in my style with my voice, et cetera, et cetera. What we like about it is available to you all the time. So today's topic is still who executives promote and why. But we thought what we would do is we got 3 initial questions from our audience in the past that we thought we would just test. And then I will answer this question after GPT. So I copied that. That's why it's highlighted. This is Ethan Evans AI. It's part of a paid chat GPT. You have to have at least the minimum $20 a month chat GPT to access this. That didn't used to be true. And I want to be clear, I don't make anything at all off this, right? That's OpenAI needing to pay off their money, pay off all their investment. So the first question was, when executives stack rank who's next in line for promotion to director, what are the top 2 traits they're seeking? Now, many of you know a lot about AI. This is not a great prompt, right? It's very short, doesn't give a lot of detail. So you could probably write a better question to give more context about your situation, about your industry, almost anything. But I don't know, it's probably small for all of you to read this. I could blow it up some, but let me just read it. It says, the straight truth, when executives stack rank candidates for promotion to director, the top 2 traits they consistently seek are 1, trusted decision maker. Executives promote those they trust to make high-stakes decisions without needing oversight. I'll go more into that in a second. Trait 2, influence and executive presence. You must be able to influence across functions and up the chain. So then it says, here's the kicker. Many senior managers miss this promotion because they focus on their team or projects, but forget that promotions at this level are based on how much you make the company better. You have to be known outside your org and bring value. So hard coaching question for you. I love this part. See, by the way, we didn't pre-test these questions. And of course, ChatGPT generates a slightly different answer every time. So if we regenerate it, we get slightly different words. but it says, who currently trusts you to make director level decisions? What's the last big decision you made that demonstrated that? So what I love about this is actually pretty good coaching. If you ask me, if you ask me live, when executives stack rank who's next in line for promotion to director, I would absolutely say trust first. And drawing off my writing in my classes, this is saying trusted decision maker. But from a trust viewpoint, no one is going to promote someone they don't trust. And trust has multiple elements. So if I were to extend this, we could ask it like, let's try real quick. Can you say more about how to define trust? How can I be trusted in this way? What does it mean? Being trusted at the executive level isn't about people liking you or thinking you're smart. It means they don't worry about you when the stakes are high. I agree super strongly with that. Now, this goes on, but all of this is stuff I say in my classes and in my writing. And so if you like my coaching, if you're familiar with my writing, this is very good at summarizing it. And the place where I actually find Ethan GPT is better than me as a coach is it can always call everything I've done to mind. Whereas I'm human, when I'm answering a question live, I don't necessarily think of everything I've ever said and tie it together. So I talk about trust being consistency over time, all the time. Owning the outcome, not just the work. What's not in here about trust, this talks about how to become trusted. Trust is also a personal trait, and I probably haven't written enough about this for the GPT to remember it. Trust grows more in a crisis. In other words, if you do something, if I need you to do something and you say you'll do it and then you do, that builds a little bit of trust. If I need you to do something and it requires visible sacrifice from you, like, oh, hey, I'm sorry, it's Friday, but this just came up and I need it Monday, and so you put in weekend work, that builds more trust. Now, if we escalate the stakes more and more, like it's an outage and it has executive visibility and we're about to lose a big contract, and then you put in this work and come up with a miracle solution, now my trust in you grows a lot, because I can see that you're doing something hard and unusual when the chips are down and we need it. So trust is not just only consistency over time. Bottom line, I think this answer is pretty good and gets you a lot. Where it falls short is maybe some of the nuance, but I wanted to show you that ChatGPT does a pretty good job. And some people who use it are, if you haven't read it, they're talking in the chat about what it can do for them. And I want you to know that, because in the end, I am mission driven. I want to help more people succeed. And ChatGPT scales in a way that I personally, even doing these lightning lessons or coaching, I can't be there for you all the time, and it can, which is why we built it. So let's try a second question. This one's big and long. So the great thing, sorry, I just scrolled this forward for no reason. The great thing about this question is it makes a much better prompt, because it's going to give Ethan GPT a lot more information to work with. So let's ask this. We got to get rid of it. Wants to copy the image over all the time, which we don't need. Okay. So the question, if you didn't read it on the screen, was next in line for promotion is me or my peer. We're essentially tied on performance, but it feels like my peer has a closer relationship with our manager. How do I break through this? Straight truth, if everything is tied, then relationship will tip the scale. I 100% agree with that. And that's probably someone who knew me asked this question and knew I agreed with that. If it's otherwise equal, look, let's just be honest about this. If I have two equal candidates for a role, why would I not choose the one that I like better and find easier to work with? Like if they're truly equal, that's a no-brainer to choose, because if I'm going to promote you in my team, I'm going to spend a lot of time with you. And so both consciously and unconsciously, I'm going to prefer people that I enjoy working with, because all other things being equal, why would I not want a team of people around me that are easy than a team of people that are hard? Okay. So then what else does ChatGPT say here? Well, so the tactical goal here is not to beat your peer. I don't talk a lot about competitive thinking. Uh, it's to become the person your manager and skip level instinctively trust more deeply. Trust includes how much I like you, how much I trust you interpersonally, or I feel comfortable with you. So the question goes on then, ChatGPT in this case, Ethan GPT, is giving an incredibly long, detailed answer. I will only read the headlines. Make the relationship deliberate, not accidental. So put effort into it. Be the executive before you're called one. So this is do work at that level, step up, take responsibility, volunteer, push outward, and do work that helps the whole company. It has keywords I use a lot. They elevate the whole business. Create memory anchors. So this is doing things that are memorable. This is about visibility, making sure that what you do sticks in your leader's mind. And you do that not by bragging, but by appropriately sharing and highlighting. A quick story, and this is a place where GPT is not strong, is telling memorable stories. It will give you very accurate answers, good coaching. It won't necessarily make it easy to remember. So a story, my team had just shipped something major. It shipped the very first version of Prime Video. And my manager, a vice president at Amazon, he didn't give out a lot of praise. So I actually emailed him a very frank message, and I said, look, now is when you should send an email congratulating the team. Like, I expect you to. And so he did. But I don't think he would have if I hadn't poked him and said, look, do this. Well, importantly, I was forcing him to acknowledge that we had done something important. But by telling him I needed him to do it for my team, it wasn't about me. Yet, whose accomplishment was he ultimately acknowledging? Well, my team, but of course it's my team. So that's an example of how I planted a flag in his mind and, made him acknowledge it. And it's not like he didn't really have any choice in this, right? Like you might think you could say, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. But he'd look like a total jerk after we made a huge product shipment to be like, I'm not sending, your team doesn't deserve congratulations, or how dare you tell me that? He'd look like an ass. So he had no choice but to do it, but by doing it, I got to plant the flag in his brain. So that's an example. So it is redefine trust. This is a good point. ChatGPT here says, redefine trust, change it from execution to strategic judgment. You want to be trusted to execute, but at the director level, which is what this question was about, it is more execution is table stakes. You want to be trusted at the next level. You want to be trusted at the higher level, which is your decision making or strategic judgment. This is maybe lousy advice, honestly. It says play the long game, be direct about your intent. The question was, how do I win right now? And so this is ChatGPT giving good general career advice, but I don't think it's truly answering the question. So I see a lot of people in chat saying they use the GPT a lot, which is great. Okay, we'll do one more from here, and then I'll take some live questions. So one more. This is, again, a terrible prompt, and we're exemplifying what you can do with bad prompts and then how we can make them better. So we're kind of showing both things. So here we go. This prompt just says, what if my scope isn't big enough to justify a director title? Now, I've talked a lot about this in my classes, and I like this. It's very straight up at the beginning. If it's too small to read, it says, if your scope isn't big enough, you're not getting promoted no matter how strong your performance is. At director level, scope isn't a reward, it's a requirement. Well, of course there are some exceptions where you might get promoted because you're so incredible, but those are going to be where your performance is so above the next level that people are going to promote you to keep you, and despite all kinds of flaws. Honestly, in a good company, an Amazon, a Google, a startup that's high performance, being that far above all your peers is super arse hard and isn't a path for most of us. Look, if you can do that, if you can just be so great, then you don't need any of this. But that's unlikely. So then what's it say? Well, chat says, look, acknowledge the game. Promotions are about need, not deserve. This is key. If you're earlier in your career, you can be promoted based on what your abilities are. You can go from junior to regular to senior. Those are titles that got created to differentiate levels of ability. And more or less, a company can have an endless number of senior marketers or senior engineers, etc. But above that, there starts to become, well, how many do we need? How many do we want to pay for? And at that level, you have to have enough scope and impact. So there's a thing here about how to manufacture scope. And I love, this is my voice coming through. Chat's really good. It doesn't just say manufacture more scope. It then says, yes, you can. And here it talks about take over neglected territory. So go find unused things or neglected things. Pitch in on a new initiative if there are any in your area. Grow your existing impact. So do more with what you have to show more value. I would say here's an example of ChatGPT trying to tell a story. It says, I wasn't given the Amazon App Store. I asked to lead an initiative no one else wanted. And so that's how I got, this is actually not true that this is what gave me director scope. So this is where ChatGPT sometimes hallucinates. It's not perfect. It's too bad. Anyway, it is true, though, you can get more scope in several ways. You can invent something new people want to work on. You can go work on someone else's new invention, or you can find things that no one's doing that have been sort of put out to pasture and make value out of them. There are probably some other ways. Over and over again, you see if you want to get promoted at any level, these questions have been about director, but if you want to get promoted at any level, it says over and over, you're going to have to talk with your manager about it. This is correct. If you haven't had that conversation, I just will frame it to you this way, which isn't going to show up in chat. So this is a weakness of chat. The way I would frame the question is no one ever got promoted over their manager's objections. That just doesn't happen because people are going to have a fantasy. If I do enough good work, I'm going to be promoted no matter what. But if I'm the manager and I'm telling my boss, I don't want Sarah at the next level, I don't think she's ready, the manager isn't going to be, my manager isn't going to be like, well, tough. You're going to need to work with her at the higher level. At the most, he'd be like, well, I think she's really great. I'm going to move her out from under you and use her somewhere else because I think she's ready now. In some world, that at least can happen. But basically, you need to get your manager on board with helping you. And that, again, goes back to trust. Do they trust that investing in you will pay off for them, is the right thing to do, and they can stake their reputation on you? Okay, so no one's bothered to put any questions into the Q&A tool. So I want to keep showing ChatGPT, but if you want to ask a question live and get my answer as well as the tool's answer, raise your hand in Zoom and we'll have you come off mute and ask. And then I'll probably type for you, or you can put it in chat if you want, in the Zoom meeting chat, and I can copy and paste. So, who has a question? Santi, good to see you as always.
Thank you, Ethan. So if one of my boss has a peer who doesn't want anything to do with the area I'm working on, and he's on the promotion committee, how do I turn him around? Or how do I pitch an idea? What's the best way to turn him around and get his buy-in to like give a yes or say yes to my promotion that will come up in like 6 months or so in the next cycle? Do you have any suggestions?
So I've been typing this in. Let's just see what chat has to say.
Yeah.
So I agree a lot with, I don't agree 100% with ChatGPT. It opens and says you're not getting promoted if someone on the promotion committee is actively disinterested or dismissive of your work, especially if they're a peer of your boss. At director level, cross-functional influence and peer support are must-haves. And then it goes on to how to solve it. So it says diagnose the resistance, which is a question I would ask you. I'll just go ahead and ask you real quick. Why is this? Okay. Is this person not interested in your team's work, or do they have a problem with you?
Not a problem with me. He doesn't want anything to do with work that involves regulations. But we're a biotech company, so we have to deal with regulations. So I have to turn him around a bit and pitch some ideas. I have some ideas around AI use cases that I can probably work with him about and get him excited. So that's a path I can pursue and I can talk to him about. Yeah.
So one thing is, one angle you should play up is, look, I get that you don't see a ton of value in my team. Like,
Yeah.
I understand that you find what my team, I would frame it as, I understand that you find what my team has to do as somewhat distasteful. So I would address the so-called elephant in the room.
Mm-hmm.
But then what I would say to him is, as you know, I'm coming up for promotion and you're going to have a say in that. I would ask that you try to separate my team's mandate from my ability to lead at the next level.
Mm-hmm.
So I would try and draw a don't shoot the messenger kind of thing. And then two other quick tips. And of course you use ChatGPT, so you can quiz it more on your own. But two other things I would say to help you are, your boss should help with this. If your manager is really behind you, your manager should be willing to have some sort of conversation with his peer that says, hey, Santi is doing what I told her to. What the company wants, don't punish her for that. Like, if you have a problem with how I'm directing her team, let's you and I talk about it. That's ideally what your manager would do in a case like this.
Okay.
That said, the other thing, and there is advice here, which it says step 2, get in his world. You have to find a way to help him, or as you said, make something you're doing valuable or interesting to him. It seems like what will make things most interesting to him is you talking about how you're keeping regulation out of his way, right? Because he
Yeah.
doesn't want it.
Yeah.
All right. I see, Hurry, that you have your hand up. Someone put there's a good question here in the chat. I'll just take a quick look at that real quick. So the chat asks, how do I tell when my manager is not inclined on promoting me and I need to look for other opportunities? So let's see what the chat said. The chat GPT said. First, it said, vague feedback that never is concrete. I would never say concretizes as a word, but it's fine. I feel like a little different English came in there. Anyway, vague feedback is a sign where they can't tell you anything specific, but they're also not acting on your promotion. Second, you're not getting anything new, no scope expansion. So, and it says here, no bigger team, no bigger charter, no higher stakes initiative. If nothing positive is happening for you, you're not headed upward, because the normal way people get promoted is they get given a series of bigger and bigger things until they're at the next level. No advocacy behavior. So they're not doing anything, as it says here, to bring your name up and skip level, invite you to present to senior leaders, coach you on how to be seen as ready at the next level. This says director. The only reason it says director here is because we've asked a bunch of director questions. So of course, I'm not restarting a clean chat every time. So the questions, it's sort of assuming it's the same person asking them all. They tell you you're too valuable where you are. That's another way of saying we're not going to promote you, and it's a terrible way. I love, ChatGPT is representing me well here. It says, if you're too good to promote, then you're too good to stay. That is something I would say exactly. It's time to go. You're surrounded by peers who are advancing. So if you see everyone else going up and you're not, then it's a sign that you're last. And I also see some people looked up concretize to see if it's even real English. I would say it's more, I hear it more commonly in speakers from South Asia is where I hear concretize used more. I don't know if that's true, but in my mind, that's where I hear it. Okay. And that's just a side free. So honestly, this is the first question I would say ChatGPT just nailed. And I could spend time trying to add things to it as a demo, but the actual point is you don't need it. This answered the question. So Hurry, come on off mute and tell me what's on your mind.
All right. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
If you're starting in a new company, what's a good process to understand what specifically the executive team values, essentially what they don't say, to secure early wins?
So I'm just going to try and get this in real quick. If you're starting with a new company, what are some good ways to find out what the executive team values?
Yeah, what they don't publicly say to secure early wins.
Okay, I know how I would answer this. Let's see how chat does. Executives rarely tell you what they really value in onboarding decks or town halls. Their public statements are filtered through PR, HR, and culture. If you want early wins that actually get noticed, you need to discover what they reward, prioritize, etc. So this is ChatGPT's usual, saying your question is smart part. It then goes on to say, watch what they praise and punish. I agree with this. If they're not going to tell you, then you have to observe it. You have to figure it out by looking at it. So watch what they praise and punish. Who's getting promoted? Who gets in trouble? Here's a good one. What are the hero stories that are told? And it says, look for key phrases like, she really stepped up. He just figured it out, made it happen. So I think this is pretty good advice, but if they're not telling you, then you can watch. So thing one is observe, and that would have been on my list of how to answer this. I don't think it would have been the first thing I would have said. The second thing it says is reverse engineer executive priorities from their calendar. So this is, again, a type of observing. Where do they show up in person? What metrics do they always ask about? Basically, where are they spending their time tells you what they really value. Listen for unspoken tension. Every org has a silent pain point. I would not have said this. I don't think it's wrong. It's another type of observe. Track what makes it into metrics decks or reviews. Again, that's another type of observe. Then it says use shadowing questions when you're onboarding. This one I like, and this gets at the other point. Ask others. Ask other people at your level, hey, what really is valued here? What have been the biggest wins in the last year? What have been the biggest failures? You basically ask around. How we find culture, one definition of culture is how things are done around here. So you can ask around with peers or others who might be more open to sharing what's going on around here. What gets done, what doesn't, what gets valued, what doesn't. So if I were summarizing, ask the executives directly, read everything they've written. You're saying those aren't getting you everything you want. So observe what they're actually doing, and then go and ask peers. That's basically a science called triangulation, where if you can't go straight, you go over to another person and then to who you want. Particularly if they have a chief of staff. Chiefs of staff, kind of their job is to translate their boss to the public. So a good chief of staff will be very good at telling you this. So that's a few different answers. I like this point. Use natural conversation and remove fluff. I've never done that, but that's not a bad idea. And as you all know, hopefully this has shown you that there's a ton of knowledge in those 500,000 words I've fed in here. It does take you doing a little bit of work on the prompts. So we have a couple questions that were submitted to the Q&A tool. They're a little bit longer, so they make good prompts. I have not read them yet, so we'll just put them in, and we'll end after I do these two questions. So actually, that's a good point for me to say, hey, I'm teaching a class in a few weeks. If you want the really deep part of how to get promoted to an executive or to any senior level, Maven made this part of their Maven 100, and it's 20% off until Sunday. So if you want to know the full Ethan, 14 hours of lecture and Q&A and support through the 4 workshops, or I guess we're up to 16 hours now. We keep adding content. If you want the dedicated, focused, as opposed to you have to ask the question, I structure it and try and tell you everything, this class. It's 6 hours of focused lecture and then a lot of support, which you can take as much of or as little of as you want. And it's on discount. Second, my COO who's here, Jason, has built the equivalent class for people earlier in their careers. So he's starting his class a week earlier. If you're earlier in your career and you want to get promoted, we basically said, what works for executives? Okay, how is that different for people who are earlier in their career? How do we do that? He leads the class, I guest lecture. It's also 20% off. So those are your 2 big chances. I also want to be clear before I answer these other questions. If you want to get instant access to Ethan GPT, you do have to have a paid ChatGPT account, either through your work or through $20 a month. I don't get a penny of that. I'll make it really simple for you. People pay me between $1,000 and $1,500 an hour for private coaching. You can get 6 years of GPT access for less than an hour of coaching. it's kind of a screaming deal, and I'm not getting paid in that. So I'm cannibalizing my own $1,000 an hour business to tell you this. That's kind of how much I believe in it. You can subscribe to the free newsletter, and the link is there. So now we're doing Q&A. And if you don't know where to follow me, that seems hard to believe, but just ethanevans.com or Ethan EthanGPT on LinkedIn. So back to questions real quick. Come on. There we go. See, I copied this. Okay. So this is a meta question. It asked ChatGPT why it recommended something, or Ethan AI. So the question was, one of the recommendations Ethan AI gave me was to update my LinkedIn title to better reflect the scope of my current responsibilities. While my official title is senior manager, my actual responsibilities align with a senior director role. I found this suggestion really intriguing. How might my colleagues in my current company? Yeah, okay. So I'm curious. I have no idea what Ethan Evans AI is going to say about this. But yeah, it actually is pretty good. It says updating your LinkedIn title to reflect your actual scope rather than your official title is a smart career move, but only if you do it with strategic intent and surgical precision. Done well, it positions you, etc. Done poorly, it reads as title inflation or posturing. And then it goes through how everybody will interpret it. So I like this, right? Instead of faking a title, show scope and function. Senior Manager, Global Payment Strategy, parentheses, Director level scope. Senior Manager, acting as Director of Product Ops, 100+ person org. Senior Manager, leading business, blah, 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 Director equivalent. I like those. I like that approach. I think this is going to work poorly if your current job is at one of the big known companies whose levels are considered right or standards. So I think if you're at Microsoft and you are saying, oh, well, I'm a level 63, but my job is equivalent to a level 67, nobody's going to buy that. And that's a terrible idea. If you're at a small company where nobody really knows about your company and the titles could be whatever, there's some value in explaining more what you do by giving the metrics that go with it. And then if someone, anything you do on LinkedIn, someone may ask you about externally, here's what you should never do. You should never in your life be surprised if someone asks you about your social media. You should know what you're going to say. So if I'm your boss and I come to you and say, hey, I noticed you have this weird director thing on your LinkedIn, like, what's that about? Are you fishing for a promotion? Are you planning on going to another company? You need to be super smooth on that. You have no reason not to be smooth because you can think about it in advance and record that answer in your mind. And you want to say something like, wow, our company is not as well known. And so I'm simply trying to explain what I do here in terms everyone can relate to. As for my career growth, like anyone, I'm always interested in career growth. And yes, I am not actively looking for a job, but just like you, I assume I am open. If someone comes with a great offer, I'm going to listen. And that's the right way to say I'm loyal, but I'm not stupid. And I made that up off the top of my head, although I've thought about the question before. But you need to be real smooth about basically saying, no, I love it here and I plan to stay, but I'm not so much planning to stay that if someone approaches me with a way better offer, I'm not even going to listen. And you can kind of say that in a way that makes other people realize, like, okay, well, that's human. And it puts a little pressure on them. I actually am doing a talk in a couple weeks, and one of the bullets is threatening without threatening. You need to get good at letting people know that you are very loyal and you want to grow in the company, but you're not so loyal that they can just ignore you. and that you are willing to leave if nothing happens. So that balance is saying, of course, I love it here. I think Acme Inc. is a really great company, and I like working with you. At the same time, it's a big market, and I have a family to take care of. Even if your family is your cat, I have a family to take care of. Parents, you put in any words you want. And I, of course, need to be thoughtful about what is best for my career at all points. And that's a way of saying, like, the ball is in your court, but if you don't do anything with it, I'm going to take the ball to another court. And I think that's good. Okay, last question we'll try. I love this, by the way. This has been really fun. I hope I see some of you, a lot of you are listening intently. I hope you're getting a lot out of it. How do you contend? Let's go ahead and get this started. The question is, how do you contend with being a director before, but doing a senior PM role now, just because AI scene has got you being hands-on? So now interviews are asking me, are you sure you want to be in role, which is a notch or two below based on what you've done before? Also, professionally, is being an operator a recipe for disaster? So this very much depends on your market, which it says here. People take a down level, a quote unquote down level to get into things. I think ChatGPT here may have misinterpreted the way this person wrote the question. Careers go up and down by title. It matters more where you're at in the work you're doing, the opportunity. To be very clear, I had been a vice president at 3 consecutive startups. So like 7 years with a vice president title. 6 years. Then I took a senior manager role at Amazon. It was a smaller team. I had 2 teams of 15, 1 team of 30 that had multiple managers in them. My first team at Amazon was 6 people. I was the direct manager. So I went from being a second or third line manager and an executive to being a senior manager with only 6 people. But it paid more. It was more financially stable. And I was able to grow back to director and then vice president. And the second vice president, right, at Amazon was way bigger, like several hundred people and a lot more money, a hell of a lot more money. So part of the question here is, what are we comparing? Is it what type of director versus what type of senior manager, et cetera, or senior PM? What company are you at? What else do you own? You have to look at the whole thing. ChatGPT, then Ethan GPT, Ethan AI gives you, you want to be good at telling your story. Why are you doing this? The person who wrote the question seems to say they're choosing to be hands-on with AI. I think that can be a very strong story. With AI, we need to be hands-on. You have to learn this stuff firsthand. I don't want to be out of touch with technology. But look, I can tell any story I want. If I wanted to tell the reverse story with confidence, it's partly how you tell it. If I wanted to say, well, I do use AI and I work on it, but honestly, my focus is on empowering the experts on my team to take AI to the utmost limit. And if I'm spending too much time hands-on with the tools myself, then I'm not focusing on that job that is more important, because I can have them educate me as opposed to me learning it all myself. That's stupid when I have 60 people on my team and I can get 60 times the learning by focusing on empowering them. I can tell both sides of that story. Being dead honest, how well your career will go depends on how forcefully you can tell your story with conviction that shows you believe it. Here's why. One person hearing my story will be the one I just told, will be like, that guy's disconnected. He's not hands-on enough. We don't want him. But someone else will be like, that's exactly the type of leader we need. A leader who doesn't get sucked into the shiny object themselves, but is driving business value. Remember, when you're looking at promotions and getting hired, you don't need everyone to love you or like you. You need a couple people to love you enough to give you the chance. So it's actually better to take a position that some will love and some will hate than a neutral position that doesn't impress anyone. All right. So with all of that, I'm going to stop sharing. We've demoed this. I think we've had a great talk. I hope you have. I appreciate all of you being here for the lightning lesson, all the people who hopefully got a lot of value out of this, a lot of smiling faces. It's interesting, everyone who's now -1 with Hari coming on. It's nice to see a lot of women here listening, at least in my top row that shows up about this, because I like to invest in everybody's careers, but sometimes women face more challenges at getting to higher levels. So I'm glad you're here. I hope it benefits you. If you need my class, come after it. If you don't, enjoy Ethan GPT. And we're doing lightning lessons on July 9th and July 10th, actually. So if you want to sign up for more, we're going to cover how to say no. We're going to cover another one of these GPT sessions. And with that, Anand asked, can you ask it to give stories? I bet it can. We'll just test real quick because I'm curious about it. Can you tell me a story from Ethan's history or teams that illustrate this idea? Okay, I figured it would pull up. Yeah, and this is a great story. It's a real story from me. It's told skimming it quickly. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so you can get more stories. If you want memorable stuff, you can get real life stories of what I did because they're all in there. Because this is drawn off my LinkedIn posts in part and my newsletter, and I've written about many of those stories. So actually, that's a great suggestion, Anand. Thank you. And it did a really good job. So, very smart prompt. Okay, everybody, we're going to call it. Jason, you can kill the recording. Everyone else, thank you for your 50 minutes and see you next time. Goodbye.